guys, welcome back to the Keystone Central Railroad. In this video I'm going to be continuing my track laying in my yard area and the tracks leading into the engine facility. And in my previous layout update video where I discussed my yard tracks, I had a request on maybe providing some information on how I draw out my track lines. So I will cover that in this video and hopefully give you some pointers on that if it's something that you need a little help with or not quite sure about. And I never had a video per se on dedicated to track laying techniques or tips, but you know, over various layout updates in the past I have discussed and showed a little bit of my track laying and things I do as far as track lines and things like that. So but this video I'll dedicate to just track lines, and then I will throw in a couple tips and techniques that I do for laying track that may help some of you guys out that who may have some questions on that. It's not necessarily the right or wrong way to do things, just the way I do it, so I will share that with you guys, and if it provides some help, great. Alright, stay tuned. I'm going to get the camera set up and we'll get moving forward with this video. Alright guys, when it comes to laying track lines or drawing your track lines, once you have a point of reference, it's very easy to do. Now, first thing you need would be your track plan, or at least an idea of where you want your tracks to go. Some other things I use, of course you need a marker or a pen or something. I have a very fine point Sharpie that I use here. That comes in handy. Tape measure. I like this ruler. I picked this up I don't know how many years ago. It's clear, so that really makes things a lot easier when drawing outlines. You can like lay it over top things and still see what you're doing. So this is just a 2-foot ruler, but it's clear and I like it, and it works out nice. And one other thing that I use are pieces of Cork Roadbed, and I use them for whenever I'm making some irregular curves or things like that. I'll show you that in a minute. You can pin them in place where you need them and then draw your track line off of that. And one other thing that I use, let me find it. I found it. My homemade Trammel. I discussed this in a couple videos before. Basically these are 3 yardsticks, and I'll just cover it real quick here. 2 yardsticks, I drill a hole right in the end of it. Then a 3rd yardstick, you drill a numerous amount of holes at every inch mark. And then you have a hole at the very end of that one that you drew holes in all the inch marks. Put a hole in the end for a pen. Now I put the hole at the, what I did was I put the hole at the half inch mark. So if I want, say, a 24-inch radius, then I drill a hole back here at the 24.5 inch mark, since we have the half inch already used up front here. And then various steps all at every inch increment all the way back for whatever radius that you plan on making a curve. And when I turn the camera around, I'll show you just quickly what I mean by using this tool, but it comes in pretty handy. Other people have used different ways of making perfect curve radiuses. This is the way I've used it, so feel free to use this idea if you want. Alright, let me show you some tips on drawing out your track lines. Alright, let me show you quick what I'm talking about with this Trammel. I'm not going to use it right now, but I will show you what I mean. We have the two yardsticks that have a hole right at the very end. We've got our bolt up through there. And then we have the 3rd one. This is your hole. You would drill it big enough to stick a pen in there. And it'll fit. Drill it so the pen will fit snug. And then you can undo this bolt and decide what diameter curve you're making. Right now I have it set up for a 24-inch radius. So I have it set like that. Then you just stick these, spread these out and then you have your pen here. Now once you have your point of reference where you want to start with your curve, say we're going to draw a 24-inch radius curve. Just imagine there's a pen in that. Alright, and here, let's say that's my starting point where I want to curve. And we're going to curve all the way around with a 24-inch radius curve. Then all you have to do is take that, make sure your pen's down or whatever marker, and as you bring it around, you will draw a perfect 24-inch radius curve. If you want it larger or smaller, just drill your holes accordingly, adjust your yardstick in that hole, and draw your curve. Simple as that. And that comes in really handy. Alright, now for this step here, I'm going to draw out my yard lead, which comes off right here. And if you see, it follows the main line all the way around to there. Now as we look up here, this is where the yard lead would start, off of the turnout that I just showed you there. So now we have to draw that track line all the way around as it follows the main line. To do that, we have our point of reference. That's all you need. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I have this set up here at the start of my yard lead here. Now, what we need is our point of reference. So for this instance here, the point of reference would be the distance from the main line to the center of this turnout right here, where the yard lead is coming off. So we want track centers. So I'm going to measure the track center from the main line to the track center of this turnout where the yard lead comes off. Now this ruler's again clear, of course, and it does not start at the very end of the ruler. It actually starts if there's the lines in further. But anyways, so what it is, we're going to measure center to center, and it's 2 3/8. So we want to run that track line according to the plan. It follows the main line all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move down here a little further. Pardon me, I'll move the camera. Move down here a little further, and we want to draw a little line for 2 3/8. And right there. About right. Yeah. Okay. There we have a 2 3/8. Now what you got to do, I mean, if you want it to remain a 2 3/8 inch spacing from the main line, just continue along, measuring from the track center of the main line 2 3/8 out every so often, and put a mark. So I'm going to continue that. Actually, I think I'll keep it 2 3/8 right till it starts curving. As it starts curving, I'm going to bump it out just to an even 2 1/2. It won't hurt to have a little bit extra spacing away from the main line. So let me adjust this camera a little more. I don't have to show you me doing all of them, but I will show you a little bit of me doing it. So like I said, it all comes down to a point of reference. Once you have a point of reference, it's really, really easy to do. And we're just going to make our marks. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Nobody on a video will be able to tell. No. So that's what you do. Just start drawing your, making your marks. You can't have too many marks. I think I'm going to start spacing this out to 2 1/2. I'll just work my way at each interval. I'm going to bump it out a little bit, and then I'll hit 2 1/2 from this moment on. Especially in the curves, it doesn't, I mean, better safe than sorry. And just move around and make your marks. I'm going to continue this, and then after I get these marks, I'll show you what I mean about drawing track lines. As you can see, I really don't need the Trammel for this part, so it's just easier to do it this way. So let me finish making these marks, and then we'll come back and draw a track line. Okay, now I have all my marks made. Now we need to draw the track center line. Now, when it comes to a straight section, that's pretty easy. You know, you just use your straight edge or your roller, line it up with your marks, and draw your line. I don't know about some other people, but it takes me a long time to lay track because I'm very particular. I have a little bit of OCD. I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I tend to spend a lot of time on things. So there we have a nice line going. Now I did extend it a little bit past the curve, where the curve starts. That's okay. You know, there's no big deal about that. Now, as far as the curve, let me show you what we do with that. Now, I could ultimately use the Trammel if I knew exactly what radius I wanted to draw, but to be honest with you, I really don't know what radius this is. I know it's well over 24, but who knows? So that's where things like the Cork Roadbed come in handy, and I will show you. And this is also how you would, how I would make, like, say, an S curve. You know, that's, you never know what that is. So what I do is I take my Cork Roadbed, split it in half like you would if you were laying it, and we have our marks here. So just start pinning it in place over your marks. That's why I said the more marks you have on here, the better. You'll get a lot more uniformed curve. And you just work your way around, pinning it in place. This is where it comes in handy for having foam on top of your sub roadbed or your layout tabletop. If you have the wood tabletop, and no foam or anything like that, well, you're going to have to figure out a different way of putting this in here, I guess. I guess this will only work for people that are able to pin things in place, which so happens to work out perfect for me. So, at this point, I don't know if I'm still in the camera or not, but what I'm doing is working my way around with the roadbed, pinning it in place. Now, simple. All we have to do, trace along the edge of the roadbed for our curved track line. And I had a lot of marks on there, so it should be a nice uniformed, even curve. Should look pretty nice. Sometimes this Sharpie doesn't want to write very well on the cork. It just kind of peels it off instead, but we should have a mark there. Well, let's pop it off quick and look. It's definitely dark enough to see. You only need it dark enough for you to be able to see. You know, and if you're drawing lines where you lay Cork Roadbed, it works in the same fashion. You have your center line then to lay your Cork Roadbed after you draw it. You know, then you could glue this one on the one side, your other half goes on the other side. You know how to lay Cork Roadbed, I'm sure. But that's how we do that, guys. It's a pretty simple process. Like I said, all it does is it comes back to your point of reference. If you have a point of reference, you're good to go. It's easy. How about I spin this around and show you what I was talking about. If you want to make some irregular curves, or maybe not a continuous radius curve, that's where this idea comes in handy. You know, you can pin it in place to whatever desired curve or whatever that you're making. You know, say you're trying to make more of like an S curve type. You know, just pin it in place how you want the curve to be. You know, and so on and so on. Say that was what you wanted to make. well then there you go. You pin that in place, draw your center line, and you're good to go. Alright, now I moved the camera around the other angle. So as we were going before, this is where we were drawing the start of our yard lead. The camera was sitting over here facing the other direction last time, so I didn't want you to get disoriented about where we were looking on the layout. I just laid these turnouts in here for the time being. These turnouts will be the start of the tracks leading into the engine facility. I decided, just kind of looking at my track plan and what I wanted my yard tracks coming off of these turnouts being on 2.5 inch centers. Now I know for a fact that my engine facility track centers for those tracks I think are more like 3.5. So as we start around the curve of the track center line, we will be slowly spreading them out, but for the time being we just need to start here. So again, we need our point of reference, which would be the track center line that we just drew. Now we're gonna be going off of that. So I laid these in here right now just because I did some of this off camera, but all I did was to get my next track center line for the turnout coming off here. I went 2.5 inches from that yard lead line that we already drew, and then again for the next turnout, moved down and I drew would be 2.5 inches off that line that I drew, or 5 inches from the yard lead line that we drew already. So like I said, it all comes back to points of reference. So once I had that determined, so I would have 2.5 inch track spacing centers for all of them tracks coming down through, I did that, and that pretty much told me where I needed to position my turnout in relationship to coming off the one that's already been mounted for a long time, actually, when I laid the main line. So in order to do that, I needed to cut filler pieces, because if I butted the turnouts right up to the next one and this one up to that one, it would be a lot tighter than 2.5. So after I knew the tracks, or the track center spacing for the turnouts, then I went ahead and cut my flex track pieces to fit in there. And like I said, I'm very particular, so it took a little bit of time till I got exactly what I wanted. So I laid them in there, and then I put my head down here and looked directly up the track at track level, just to make sure everything looks lined up nicely. I didn't want this going, you know what I mean, coming down through there. I like a nice straight track coming down through the turnouts. So again, that's how I determined what size filler pieces I needed. I had the track center line plus eyeballing it to make sure everything was nice and straight. So now that we have that in place, we have this track lead going into the engine house, this one's going into the engine house, and then we'll have this one coming here. Now before I draw this center line here, I'm going to place my engine house where I want it. That'll give us our next point of reference to go off of. And we'll start seeing it all comes together with points of reference. So that's how I do it. It's pretty simple. Just takes a little calculation, that's all. And I don't know, that's it. I think it's fairly easy, fairly straightforward. You just need some simple tools and simple math. Alright, I'm going to give you the first person perspective on this. Now the next was to work on the engine facility. I mean, some of this is trial and error. I situated this, I measured the track plan, looked at the track plan where this was located and measured it. It was, pardon me for moving again. I should have took this with me. The engine house was, that corner there was 2 feet from the end of the wall. So there we go. Measured 2 feet from that wall, gave me the end of this corner. So that's where I set it. Now as far as depth on the layout, I just was, that's kind of trial and error for me. You just got to make sure everything You have room for everything. There's the yard lead coming around. And just doing some trial and error with the Trammel, which I actually did use to get the perfect placement for this engine house. So this was like my most important track line. I had to get the line up because it's going to take this curved turnout. So I figured out where I wanted that as far as depth. So this gave me this reference point here, the center line of this track. That's a reference point, and the other reference point was here. The only thing left to do was we had to make this curve in the straight section. The straight section was not too bad. Now I did break out the Trammel for this, and I worked with this a little bit. This is 24-inch radius curve, which so happens to be the same radius as the outside of this curved turnout. Now Walters says the inside I think is 22, but anything you read and using these firsthand, the inside radius is always much tighter than what they say they are. The outside is pretty much dead on. The inside, this inside is probably more closer to 18-inch radius, which I hope that don't give me too many problems. I'm only going to be running one locomotive across it at a time, so as long as 4 axles will be fine, no problem there, but I think I'll be okay. So I took the Trammel and drew a 24-inch radius, and as you see here, it came across this inside line to this reference point. The problem was the curve was just ending right at that. Now when you leave a turnout, you don't want to start a curve directly right away. So I wanted to have a little bit of a straight yet. So I just laid my Cork Roadbed down and I bumped that line out a little wee bit. It won't be enough to really cause any problems. And I still have my 24-inch radius. And we'll plop this down here. As you see, center point, and there we go. And now with that in there, this gives me the ability to start running my program track. And the whole story with that, which I mentioned in my other videos. So I'm happy with that. Now the only thing left to do is draw 2 more track center lines for the engine facilities, and like I did with everything else, it's just reference point. These center lines here on this are more like 3-inch, a little over 3-inch track center spacing on the engine facilities. So you just come out with the same spacing out here. And what we're going to do is we're going to slowly start bringing them together a little bit to 2.5 by the time we reach here. Simple as that. Now I'm going to use the Cork Roadbed to do that, and marking some points with the roller. For the sake of length of this video, I'm not going to continue with that. I mean, it's self-explanatory, I think, from this point forward. That's how you draw your track center lines, or how I draw my track center lines. Now I also promised to leave you with a couple extra tips for laying track, laying flex track. If you solder your joints, which I do recommend as much as you can there, solder 2 pieces of flex track together before you start your curve. And solder them together while the track is straight. And that way, whenever you curve this for your curves, you'll get a nice joint right here where it won't be kinked, you know, or butted out or kinked where it'll cause you problems. It'll remain a nice, smooth flowing curve right there because they are soldered together straight. And if you solder more than 2 together at a time, you usually start running into problems. It's easier to work with if you only have 2 at a time. Also, don't forget to leave, I usually do this on straight sections, leave some expansion joints, leave some gaps, and don't solder there. Don't solder every single joint. Leave some expansion gaps for contraction and expanding when temperature changes happen. Another thing, you bump over here is a good example. When you lay your turnouts, you see these gaps here. I don't have ties in them yet, but one nice thing to do on your pieces of track that connect to the turnout, cut your ties off back far enough that you can have a rail joiner on there that's not protruding past the end of the rail on all these. Like I said, you can go back and stick ties in there at the end when you're done under there, but the reason for that, if you ever have to replace this turnout, it makes it so much easier. All you have to do is pop out them extra ties you put under there. Take a pair of pliers, slide your rail joiner clear over so it's off of the turnout on every side. And I also don't solder the rail joiners to turnouts, just for this reason. That makes it so much easier. Then once you slide them rail joiners back onto the pieces of flex track or whatever track you use, you can just pop that turnout right out. And as long as you buy one that's identical, lay the new one in, take your pliers, slide your rail joiners back on the new one, replace your ties under there, you're good to go. It's so much easier than having to cut new track or this or that. You just slide your joiners off and pop it out, pop a new one in, reconnect it. Very easy. And don't forget your feeders. I solder feeders. There's plenty of information on soldering feeders, but some people do it to every piece of track. I don't, unless I would run into issues. But the more feeders, the better. Alright, this video is probably super long. So, that's it. That's all for my track laying tips for this video. If you have any other questions on track laying, I can address them in a future video. Just leave them in the comments. Alright guys, thanks again for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.